I'm sure you guys have all heard this, right? The notion that if a woman starts sharing what's going on with her, usually she doesn't want a solution. She just wants a listener. Alison Armstrong calls it just like the holding the trash bag, right? You're just holding the trash bag as she releases and releases and releases. I also think there's this element of physical touch that is really supportive for a woman that feels full of stress, full of the world, full of the what ifs, full, and that just like really grounds her and separates her from the distractions of the environment that come in at all times for someone with diffused focus. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Ancient Intelligence. You've got your host, Anya Shack here, and today I am not in my normal place. I'm in Buenos Aires, and I'm really enjoying being here. Unfortunately, the camera that I bought to take with me on my travels, I bought a little tadpole to have a nicer camera, but it's not working. And so me and tech are not best friends, so say la vie. We will proceed without it. Let's do it. Let's talk about some stuff about men and women. Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So I have just like three key topics to highlight today, and they're not in any particular order, but I just think they're interesting. And I've had lots of insights about these topics within my life and the lives of my friends and my clients, and it's great. So, number one, men love systems and explaining their role and how they fit in that system, I think is awesome and really cool. And women don't take the time to understand that enough. And also, they're not privy to when they're not available to receive that information and that explanation that men are so dying to give. And so they cut it off and then they make men feel disregarded. And so I want to talk about that dynamic and what should be happening and what I think is really beautiful when we have a rightful dynamic with that. So men and systems. Number two, men and women and taking things personally. Oh my gosh, I think we are so silly in how we and what we take personally and what we don't take personally. And it's interesting because it's based on our singular versus our diffused focus. And if only we understood our differences better, we wouldn't take things personally and life would be so much better. I love that. So talk about that. And then number three, there's something really interesting that I've picked up on. Men are extremely sensitive to sincerity, like really sensitive. And I think men know when they're being manipulated and know when they're being lied to in a way that is subtle and nuanced. And like I say all the time, men are energetic geniuses. I think men really get what's happening. Uh, and I think women sometimes don't pick up on this, especially when women aren't in their grounded power, they're not in their truth. And the flip side to this notion that men are really sensitive to sincerity is that when the feminine is in her most powerful, when she is in her most grounded and graceful and beautiful, she is simply a vessel for truth. Someone asked me, what's your big takeaway from time spent with really conscious, grounded women? What is your big takeaway? And like being in sisterhood circles when I was in Australia a month ago with this beautiful sisterhood, the women that are in my life, the takeaway is truth. Truth is always the first value. It is the top value, telling the truth, speaking the truth, and not hedging, not waiting, not being afraid to do so. And it's so interesting that in so many relationships, women hold back the truth because they're afraid of what men will think of them or what men will think in general. And then men then pick up on that insincerity, that withholding of truth, and the connection breaks, the yin yang breaks. And it happens like on a first date, and it happens on a 10th wedding anniversary. It happens all the time. So I just think these are three really interesting topics. I'm gonna chat about them a little bit, what I think is important and interesting around them, and we'll see how far we get. I'm going to try to keep this one a little shorter, try to do my sweet spot, 22 to 25 minutes. So, all right. Men love systems and explaining what they know and how they know it. I think it's super interesting. So I remember being in a car with a good friend of mine driving around Boston area, and he every time we'd get in the car, he kept telling me like, so, we're driving west and northeast of here, there's this cow farm, and then southwest, and then about 4 miles that way, there's this, and then two 2 miles that way. You get the picture. And at a certain point, um, I was just like, oh my gosh, I really don't care what is 2 miles that way and 2 miles this way. It's not something that I'm interested in. Like I don't, I'm just not interested in this. And I was thinking that in my head. And I, instead of saying like, oh, I don't care about that, right? I was just like, I'm so curious. Like, why do you share that kind of information with me? I'm just so curious. And he's just starts talking about how, oh, well, this is my town, this is my city. I know this place, and I just want to share with you what I know and what's around to make you feel comfortable and safe and to kind of make you feel like, I got this. And I thought that was really nice to hear. And it makes so much sense when thinking about how excited I've seen and I've heard men get when they are given the opportunity to share something that they know really well or something that they're really interested in. And it's almost like they're ready to share it. And I love that. And it's one of the things that I've learned how to listen for and to understand. And I think one of the things that I've been really successful with is listening to learn. That's kind of like a little mantra that I've said to myself, like, oh, is this a listening to learn moment? Awesome. So like duct tape on my mouth, like, all right, this is classic Alison Armstrong thing. She always says, okay, when you're ready to listen with curiosity, duct tape on your mouth and just listen. And I've gotten so much richness from those conversations. And I think what's interesting is to understand whenever I do get frustrated, and I bet this would be interesting for men and women alike to hear when I'm just like, I don't want to know about this, or I'm not listening anymore. Why? What is it about the moment that's making me do that? Oh, I recognize it's because I'm full. Like I'm full. Alison Armstrong talks about this too a lot, and I'm mentioning her a lot probably over the next few weeks because I'm in her group right now, so we're having a lot of conversations. And I'm full. What does that mean? As a woman, it's one of the worst feelings to feel full. And remember, because of our diffused awareness and our diffused focus, so much from the environment is constantly grabbing for my attention. And there's a lot of stress that comes from that. And there's this sensation that, like, I can't take anything else in anymore. Like, I just cannot listen to anything else. And I think another little tidbit that's interesting is that women's amygdalas, right? The fight or flight, the fearful part of our brain, the part that turns on when something is scary, is larger. And it's 2 times as active as a man's amygdala, right? It's the part of our brain that's like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that doesn't happen? What if? And as a man listening to this, you might imagine like if our amygdala is 2 times as active as yours and it's a little bigger, that means we're what ifing all the day, throughout the whole day, which is a lot. And so there might be a really important opportunity to understand where we're at in general before trying to give someone something and then being able whether we can actually receive it. And so one of the things that happens a lot in the spaces that I'm in and my coaching spaces and all of that is this idea of, hey, I want to share something important with you. Do you have the space right now? Right? Or being able to speak up and say, hey, I really want to listen to you. I really know that matters to you, but I just can't take it in right now. And that simple thing can just save people so much heartache and frustration. And so, how hard is it to share something when you know the other person is not receiving it? They're not an open book. They're not an open container, really ready to listen, really ready to engage with you. And so I think that dynamic happens a lot. And so a lot of times what ends up happening is women will just say, "Oh, I don't care about that," or they'll ignore a man or they'll go do something else. And a man will feel instantly disregarded when maybe she's just really full and she hasn't been given the opportunity to empty out, if you will. And I think that women and men listen really differently and talk really differently in general. And I'm sure you guys have all heard this, right? The notion that, if a woman starts sharing what's going on with her, usually she doesn't want a solution. She just wants a listener. And Alison Armstrong calls it just like the holding the trash bag, right? You're just holding the trash bag as she releases and releases and releases. I also think there's this element of physical touch that is really supportive for a woman that feels full of stress, full of the world, full of the what ifs, full, and that just like really grounds her and separates her from the distractions of the environment that come in at all times for someone with diffused focus. And I think for men to understand that is really important. And a woman that is thoughtful and does care and really wants to listen, I think it's important to understand when she's full and when she's empty. And I think when she's full, a lot of men will take the way that she's not listening very well, very, very personally. And there might be some truth to the fact that she hasn't learned how to listen to men in general and what men need when they're speaking and when they're expressing. And that's important information that I want to convey and that I want to share as well. Um, so both of those things can be true. I think moving into number two, that I think is interesting, this notion of like taking things personally, right? So one of the things that we mess up all the time is we project how we are onto the other person. And because we do that, we take things personally that we shouldn't take personally. So a really good example, right? If a woman is listening to a man and the tea kettle goes off and she like walks over to pour her tea, she's still listening to him. I think that because of the way that men are and their singular focus, I imagine a man would be frustrated and upset by that, feeling like she's ignoring him or disregarding him, or he's not the number one sole focus anymore. When in reality, women have diffuse focus. She's listening just as intently to you as she was before she went to go get the tea. And that I think is something that men might not be able to wrap their minds around. So it's just completely not personal in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's it's just good to know and good information. I think women just have a different way of being with each other when they're listening and they're talking. There's a lot more activity. There's a lot of things going on. And, we can bring this back to the gatherer, right? The gatherer's got the baby on her back. She's gathering berries and nuts, and she's talking to that woman about so-and-so's birthday, and she's listening for that, and she's hearing that, and it's all happening, and it's all valid, and it's all listening, and communication is happening. Whereas I know with men and their singular focus, there really is this conversation is the thing I am focused on right now. And so any distraction here, any shift means that you're no longer focused on it. And that's just not true for women. So that's been something that we've been reviewing this week in the group that I'm in. So I think it's important. Flip side, women take single focus so personally, right? So personally. I remember, I think it was in like a David Data book. He was talking about how he was working on intensely on this project, and his wife had called him a couple of times and tried to like knock on his door and called him. He didn't even hear it. He didn't even hear the door. He was so in his tunnel. He was so focused, so zeroed in. And she took that personally, right? Because in a woman's dynamic, because as women, the environment is always accessible to us, it's it's almost insane, like to think about. Like last night on the call, it was wild. I was listening to Allison, and she was like telling someone, "Hey, can you turn off your fan?" Right? She has 100 Zoom screens on her thing, and she was like, "Can you turn off your fan? It's really distracting me." And then she keeps going. And then she tells someone else, "Can you stop whatever icon you're putting up on the Zoom thing? Can you stop that? It's really distracting." And so it's like there's so much all the time. And a woman can't really comprehend that a man, because she compares herself to a man, she compares men to her. She thinks, oh, okay, well, if I'm calling him and he's not answering, that means he's ignoring me purposefully because he can definitely hear me, right? And that's just not true. That's just not true. Male singular focus is so interesting and it's so different from women's diffused focus. And it's like, it's not personal at all. He's focused on something else and he's really in it and he cannot get out of it. And if he gets out of it, then he's no longer focused. He can't get right back into it and it throws off his game and we don't want to throw off men's game. And so I think that's yeah, I think that's it's an important one to think about not taking things personally at all. And I know that in one of the books that I've been reading with Alison Armstrong, there's this like, notion as one of the women was talking about how, I've never had a problem with my husband for 50 years. This is like the elder woman in the story that she wrote. And, it's because I never take things personally. And if I'm upset about something, I bring it up right away. And I listen to learn with curiosity. I say, "Hey, what? I was just curious. Why did you choose to do that?" And then listening to learn. There's usually a really good answer for that. One of the funny things that Allison was mentioning this week, and I've heard this before, but it just became more clear. She keeps talking about like men always have a plan. Men always have like something that they're up to, something that they're doing, something that they're trying to achieve, right? And it goes alongside this notion of a man and his singular focus and a man on a mission, get from point A to point B. And she was talking about how this woman, as she's coming into her understanding men journey, she had this boss that was always just kind of short with her and was always really hard on her and was always asking her for things really last minute. And she was just always frustrated about this. And she just kept it all to herself and never said anything. And then as she's getting into this work, really understanding men and understanding women, she started listening to learn. She started asking the questions with curiosity. And uh, she asked him, "Hey, she asked her boss at some point, "Hey, why do you always ask me for things last minute? And why do you do this? And why do you do that?" And his answer is like, "Oh, that's because I think you're the best employee of the company. I'm grooming you to take over my position. And I want to test to see how you are in high pressure situations because I think you kick butt in high pressure situations. So I keep giving you these opportunities to continue to grow and grow and grow." This woman was floored. She was like, "It's the exact opposite of what I thought he was doing. I thought he was being a jerk." but he was actually supporting my growth and giving me these opportunities. He has a plan for me, right? He's investing in me. He's thoughtful. He's caring. He's helping me grow in this very masculine way, right? This masculine way that actually gets results. It's not all talk. It's just, hey, I've been doing this stuff and you've been getting, you've been checking off the boxes. So really amazing when that kind of stuff starts to happen and thinking about listening to learn and yeah, understanding where all this stuff is coming from. And so it's really cool. And thinking about that, okay, so we talked about men love systems, talked about taking things personally, and then this notion of where she asked the question and she was just honest instead of huffing and puffing and holding it all inside. Just want to finish up with this notion of like the feminine way, truly feminine way of, and this is something I've been learning, oh my gosh, over and over and over again. And it's hard to do if there's good girl programming around, you know, invalidating of our own feelings and thinking about how don't overstep, don't say the wrong thing, don't make people uncomfortable, don't. This like very disempowering patterning that so many girls have experienced, right? And so it does such a disservice to us in our own empowerment and groundedness. And then it does a disservice to men because then women learn how to not tell the truth. They learn how to hedge. They learn how to stay quiet. They learn how to not trust themselves. And then that breaks the connection with a truly masculine man. And in that position, she's not a truly feminine woman, right? They're just playing these roles and they're not really seeing each other. So I'm leading all up to the phrase is like the feminine is really about truth and truth telling in the moment, from emotion and from what's real and what's true. And that's where the beauty and the power and the grace and the vulnerability and just the tenderness really comes from. And I think when women are sincere, no matter what, men are so inspired by that because I've learned that men are so sensitive to sincerity. If you just think about macro scale, like there's so much fakeness and insincerity. It's no wonder men are feeling so depleted and down. There's just this, ugh. And feminine truth, just like really telling the truth in the moment. And it's really interesting because it can be so hard to do because of that programming. So here's a really great example. I was coaching this woman that I know about a week ago, and she's gone on 2 dates with someone that she's met. And she likes him, and those 2 dates went really well, but it's a bit long distance, and she just feels a distance. He hasn't really responded much to her, and his responses are kind of short, and he's not really making plans for the third date. My coaching to her was like, what is it that you're interpreting? What are you feeling? What's coming up for you? What's true for you? What do you know? And she said, okay, well, I know that he's being distant, and I know that it doesn't feel like he's really that interested in me, right? And I was like, okay, that's the truth. That's true. And I suggested to her that next time they have a conversation, she shares that really clearly and truly in order to listen to learn, listen for the truth. She speaks truth. That's feminine vulnerability. And then that impacts a man in a way that, hey, sincerity is just so empowering and inspiring, then hopefully his sincerity will come through too. And so, you know, as a woman, in order to be able to say, hey, I've really enjoyed spending time with you. I've really loved those first 2 dates, but I'm feeling distance from you. I'm feeling like you might not actually be that interested in me. And I'm just curious, what's happening for you? What are you feeling, and where do you see this going? It's so scary, right? Like for her, she was like, "Oh, but we've only been on 2 dates. Isn't that crazy to do something like that after 2 dates?" And my response was absolutely not. You share exactly what you're feeling without fear of what comes after that, right? Because if you can't be truthful and upfront and honest about what you're feeling now, then you won't be able to do that later either. And that's when all of the magic between the masculine and the feminine, that's where all of that happens. And so to be able to really do that and to be honest and to be truthful is so important. And Oh, I think it's just big, powerful stuff. Some other really important things around sincerity, something that I've learned in a big, big way, is sometimes like there's this tendency to want to uh, be too nice. I think the recovering nice guys and nice gals will get that. Oh, the person that you're on a date with made something. You're like, oh my God, that's amazing. Or they said something. You're like, you're incredible. And it almost comes out autopilot because you're just seeking validation, and the person senses that it's just not sincere. There's something manipulative going on here. And I think men are really privy to that, really, really privy to that. And just on a macro scale, it's the overly nice and like, oh, we love everyone, everyone's amazing, everything's amazing kind of ideological stuff. And in reality, there's a lack of groundedness about what's real and, who men are, who women are, family and how important that is, and society and how it actually functions and works. And I think it all goes back, and it all goes into this notion of feminine truth, masculine action, and just how that works together so, so, so well. And if you think about it, there's such twisted, chaotic, feminine energy going on in the culture and in the world right now. There's been a really uh, unhealthy aspect of the feminine that's been at large, right? And that's caused a really unhealthy aspect of the masculine that's been at large, right? Feminine truth and grace inspires masculine action and, provision, whereas feminine manipulation and lies and coercion inspires masculine apathy and passivity. And that's exactly what we're seeing. It's exactly what's going on here. And so, there's such a call to men and women in such a big way to do the healing work and learn all of these things. And I'm just so passionate about all this. So hope that's been an interesting trio of observations and insights for you guys. Until the next one. Hello, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'm so happy to be here bringing my wisdom, my truths, all the research I do into pop culture and evolutionary psych and beyond to bring men and women the information that we all need to know to find that ultimate harmony with each other. This is the mission. This is why I'm here. This is what I believe in. So if you found value in what I'm doing here, please help me grow the podcast. And you can do one of two things. Either share the episode with a friend or leave me a review on Spotify or Apple. This will help me so much. Until next time.